Walid al-Haddad, a member of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood's Freedom and Justice Party's Foreign Relations Committee, said in an interview with Haaretz this week that Egypt's peace deal with Israel isn't in the constitution and therefore subject to change. While he did clarify that the Muslim Brotherhood did not intend to annul the treaty, he did say that changes would need to be made, including allowing more security forces in the Sinai Peninsula than what the treaty currently permits. The Muslim Brotherhood's comments on Sinai militarization and the now regular questioning of the utility of the Camp David Accords reveals the gradual weakening of the strategic framework that Israel and Egypt have maintained for more than 3 decades. The Sinai is a critical buffer space that straddles the Arab-Israeli divide. This harsh and rugged terrain does not make for a particularly attractive or economically useful territory to fight over. But if either side reestablishes a military presence in the space that brings the adversaries uncomfortably close, then the neutrality of the space quickly erodes and the likelihood of conflict increases. The Egyptian military's distractions with the political transition and efforts by various militant and Bedouin factions to escalate tensions between Egypt and Israel have resulted in a dramatic decline in Sinai security over the past year. That a pipeline carrying natural gas from Egypt to Israel has been attacked 14 times in the past year attests to that trend. The Bedouins that inhabit the sparsely populated Sinai Peninsula are critical to this issue. The Bedouins have long been neglected by the Egyptian state. Their political disconnect with the state, their poor economic conditions, and warrior mentality make them a particularly attractive asset to outside players looking to undermine the Egyptian-Israeli relationship. Since roughly 90% of the Bedouin are unemployed, Bedouins will typically answer to the highest bidder in deciding where to devote their attention. A Bedouin receiving payments for an Egyptian security official to keep tabs on an area could easily just turn around and receive payments from militant organizations and their political backers to facilitate weapons smuggling and attacks that emanate from the Sinai against Israeli targets. The Egyptian military is struggling to buy off support from the Bedouin communities. The latest government proposal calls for enlisting and paying young Bedouin men to patrol their areas, as well as funding to be directed toward housing and infrastructure projects to provide basic services. Given the current economic turmoil in Egypt and the severe divisions within the government, there's really no telling whether this plan will actually get the funding it needs to go anywhere, much less convince Bedouins to stop taking payments from third-party actors looking to destabilize the Sinai buffer. The Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood has become the champion for Bedouin rights in the current election campaign. This makes a lot of political sense for the Muslim Brotherhood, which is looking for a lot of ways to undermine the military's credibility in the eyes of the Egyptian people. In fact, Bedouin communities in the North Sinai are now echoing the Muslim Brotherhood's call to amend the Camp David Accords with Israel. This places all the more pressure on the Egyptian military to demonstrate that it's not politically hamstrung by an increasingly unpopular treaty with Israel. On the surface, the Egyptian military can play up its differences with Israel in trying to maintain its credibility. In reality, the Egyptian military is trying to do everything it can to avoid having Israel take Sinai security back into its own hands. Israel has already permitted a gradual increase of Egyptian forces to the Sinai this past year to deal with the near-term security issues. But in pushing the limits of the treaty, it's also unintentionally undermining the long-term foundation of the peace agreement amidst the rising political tensions. The Egyptian military cannot afford for Israel to discount the military as an authoritative political player in the Egyptian political system capable of maintaining the treaty and keeping peace in the Sinai. For now, the Egyptian military is holding its ground, and the treaty is not under imminent threat. But Israeli military planners have their eye on what the Sinai buffer will look like 3 to 5 years from now, and that picture could call for preemptive action.